Okie dokie, folks, and welcome back to Love Wrestling. I am Kyle Shaw, aka the Canadian Goose, and I am here joined today by the moment taker, Jordie Taylor out of British Columbia. Jordie, how are you doing today, buddy?
Fantastic, man. Every day's a dream.
Yeah. So let's go back and start at the beginning. When did you start wrestling, and what got you interested in it?
I've been obsessed with wrestling since I was 5. My dad showed me it when I was a kid, and funny enough, he eventually stopped liking wrestling because it didn't go the direction he wanted per se. Like, it went to the less realistic type, I guess. So he's like, "Why do you like that stuff?" And it's like, "You got me into it, bro." But anyways, I started wrestling in 2011. I went to school at Storms in 2010, but then I had to wait about 6 months to start actually wrestling because I had to move back and find myself a job and get all those things going before I started school. Because I went to Calgary and I was from the Vancouver Island in Nanaimo. But yeah, I started in 2011.
Oh, okay.
January 2011.
I didn't know you trained with Lance Storm. There's a lot of guys out here that have trained with him, and they're all quality wrestlers for sure.
Yeah, very much so.
What do you think are some of the best advantages of having that training from Lance?
Oh, I mean, the namesake is a huge part. Just to say that, I mean, like, the credibility of him as a wrestler, as a talent, whatever the case, where he's been, what he's done, is pretty I mean, going to the top of the business is something that everybody aspires to do. So having someone that made it and then learning from someone who's actually been somewhere, kind of thing. I mean, like, there's not many better things than that.
Yeah,
he's a wonderful trainer, though. Yeah.
Is there any particular lessons that you feel like you got to learn from him because you went to him rather than some other people may not have got because they didn't go to him for their training?
I would say, like, in terms of Canadian wrestling, like around here, whatever the case, like, there's not many in the world that were as technically sound as him. Like, I mean, like, there's obviously wrestlers that are as technical, but I mean, like, it's hard to find someone that good like that. Like, everything that he did in the ring was like, it was like nearly perfect, right? Like, he's so good. So just having someone who knows how to move their body, position themselves, like, stay safe, all these things, like, it's the psychology that he brought and like the breakdown of how we learned what during those 3 months was spectacular.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, just what he brings to the ring, right? Not many people have that.
Well, definitely, like, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on here was because I see all your Facebook posts all the time, and you often have a lot of, like, really good, like, advice and stuff. You know, I remember there was a whole paragraph on how to do promos and whatnot, and I thought it was all really helpful stuff, and I had, like, legitimately tried to implement some of those things, and I was just wondering if you got a lot of that stuff, like, specifically from Lance, or whereabouts else have you gained such?
That's literally knowledge. Just like, well, thank you, I appreciate that. That means a lot. In terms of, like, what I've learned, I didn't, like, I just learned the wrestling aspect from him per se, and then, like, I sucked for 6 years, so all of that was like just learning how to be in the ring and just learn everything. Like, there's so much to learn, right? Like, wrestling is just, like, you know, obviously, like, there's too many aspects to it. Not too many, but there's just a bunch. But, like, yeah, just the things that I've learned were from, because there's not necessarily a lot of names around here, like people that have been places in, like, BC or whatever the case. So, like, there's not many people, like, resources to tap per se. So it was just listening to podcasts, listening to vets, old school guys, like, from things that I find on the internet, right? And just, like, watching just a gross amount of wrestling. Like, and obviously we're all wrestling nerds. Like, we love the business, but I mean, like, I spent from 2017 to 2020 just, like, absorbing as much wrestling as I could so I could stop sucking. So all these lessons that I've learned are just from things that I've watched and heard. I haven't really had a mentor at this point, and that's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping to get into the brain of, like, somebody who's really been somewhere and done something. Like, and, like, Storm obviously has done those things, but we never really kept in contact. So yeah, everything that I've learned on my own, more or less.
I mean, that's fair, for sure.
And that's not to say that I have so much more to learn, right? Like, I technically don't know anything. Like, we never really stopped learning. So I know what I know, but I know there is a ton that I don't know, and I need to learn that.
Yeah, I hear you. Like, there's just such a vast amount of knowledge out there, especially when it comes to something as versatile as wrestling. Like, I find that the best wrestling shows are the ones that have, like, a variety of types of wrestling going on. Like I'm all for watching like a spot fest Ring of Honor technical match, but I don't want to watch 8 of them in a row. I want to watch like one or two other things going on in there. So
I totally agree. It's a smorgasbord, right? Just because I like old school wrestling and more story methodical based doesn't mean that there isn't a spot for everything.
Yeah. Is that how you would describe your style for the most part, is like a old school methodical based?
I would say like old school brawler that throws some suplexes here and there. But yeah, I don't call myself a wrestler. I'm more of an entertainer and a storyteller.
I hear you. I've always found that like when I watch your promos and I've seen you a little bit of your in-ring stuff, that you come across as very believable, like fighter,
Thank
like, where you're like, oh,
that's all I go for. My biggest, not to cut you off, sorry. My biggest like who I like, my inspiration, I guess, was Stone Cold, and like guy's a psycho, right, and real as it gets. So that's where I base all my realism from. Obviously, being myself as well, but yeah.
So when you started wrestling and training with Lance, did you end up getting bookings out here in Alberta before you went back to BC?
No, unfortunately, there was a potential for one, but I couldn't do it because it was a World of Hurt, the show. Like,
okay.
Lance was talking about having me on the show, but I was just going back to BC right after, because I mean, like, I was born in BC, and just the difference between Alberta and BC, like the mountains, and just like, I don't know, it just didn't hit me the same. And it was like that, and like I have more of a base here, so I wanted to go back home and try my luck where I was from. But aside from that, like I didn't take a booking for 6 months after I started training. So the first one I did have was in 2011 when I went to school in May 2010.
Oh, okay. So
I did attend some shows though.
Who was your first match against and whatnot, and where was that for?
That was against Harv Sira of the Bollywood Boys and Stallion Smith. They're both wrestlers from around here, of course. Harv Sira's went to WWE. But a triple threat match in a Esquimalt. And like a triple threat match is a very nerve-wracking first match to have, especially like I hadn't trained in months. So I was shit nervous, and I didn't like being in front of people. I'm a very introverted person. So like at that point too, not knowing everything about wrestling, it was like one of the most terrifying but liberating experiences of my life.
Yeah. My first match was a triple threat match. It was against Steven Styles and Epic Eddie Rude in Bonnyville, Alberta. And I was completely underprepared for it, but it was a good time. I look back on it now fondly, and I have fond memories of it. But it was one of those things where, you needed to grow for sure.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes. My first match, it's hard to watch back, but I give myself some space to like appreciate it, in the sense that like, obviously it's your first match, but funny story for that whole thing. Like I said, I was nervous. So my name at the time was the Greed Father, and they called me the Greed Master. And I had a CD that my sister gave me, and I put a song on it, obviously, for my entrance theme. And she didn't tell me that there was a song already on it. And so the song was Blink-182, All the Small Things. And like, I'm sitting there just like nervous as fuck. I don't know if you can swear, but I was sitting there nervous, and like, obviously I'm about to go out there, and a different song hits. And unfortunately, the song that hit was a female wrestler's theme too, in that same company. So they thought that she was coming out, and then I come out, and I didn't know that it was my theme. So I'm like sitting there waiting for my cue, being like, what is this music? And even more so than that, I got a spray tan the night before, and I'd never got a spray tan. And I didn't know that you were supposed to like wear your gear that you're going to wear. So I wore boxers, and then I had like an inch line of whiteness between my leg and where my gear started. And more so than that, I was trying to sleep like a log the whole night, so I didn't have messed up spray tan. So I slept like this, and I ended up drooling right here on my chest. And I woke up with a big white mark on my center of my chest. My legs weren't tanned properly. My music was wrong. They called my name wrong. It's like, damn.
I seem to recall in my first one, they were playing we had a specific order of which we were supposed to come out, and then they did end up playing Squig's music for my entrance, and I just said to him, you should go out because you don't want to come out to my Goose music, so that's basically what we just switched it up, but yeah, for sure. What do you think about stuff like that, like your music and stuff? How important do you feel that's to like the entire presentation?
I mean, every single bit is as important as the other. Like, it all needs everything else in order to complete the package. Like, with your theme music and say like your entrance, as soon as you hit the curtain, you don't get a second opportunity to make a first impression, right? So like, if you hit the curtain and your music isn't captivating, if it drags too long, if it's too overbearing, if you're not confident when you come out, if you don't embrace the people, if you don't show them whether your face or your heel, like every single thing in that first 10 seconds can make or break you. But like, a theme music sets the tone, right? Like, if you look at like a Stone Cold Steve Austin, if he didn't have that glass shattering, then it would still be his aggressive self, but it wouldn't hit the same, you know? Like, music is everything, I feel.
Yeah, it's definitely something I put a lot of thought into every once in a while. Try to spice things up or whatever.
I've had this problem where I get bored really easily of the song that I'm using, the song that I'm using. Anyways, so I have a tendency to change them up. And then at one point I was like, I'm just going to use a different theme every show. So when you hear a different song you've never heard before, then you know it's me. But then, which was awesome, was a wrestling fan who's also a musician from the States. He said that he wanted to make a theme for me, and then I was like, well, of course, obviously. And then so he did so, and it was awesome. And then I finally started keeping that as my theme, and now he's actually making me a new one that's going to be coming out next week for my group. So that's dope.
Oh, solid. Yeah, that's always cool. I paid a guy to make mine too. The guy I went to high school with, he had like a thing on Fiverr where you could pay like, it ended up being more than $5, but I think I paid like $60, but now I own this song in perpetuity, right? So I don't have to worry about it. So I can, if they want to put it in a video or something, it's not a big deal. I can just say, yeah, it's cool with me,
that's so like, it's worth so much, right? Just to have your own song, just because, I mean, like, it takes away when you have all that copywritten stuff and you can't play theme music. It's not ECW from back in the day, right?
Yeah, no, it looks real podunk on like a YouTube video when all the entrances are just cut off because you can't play anybody's music, right? And then it also like it affects the entire way the show goes down too, like because you still have to introduce those people,
Yeah, and you got to have your entrance, because how are you going to tell if they're face or they're heel, right? If they're not coming out and portraying that immediately.
Yeah, and like just like their names and stuff too, like that's all said generally while the person's music's playing, unless it's like a special title match situation or something, right? Yeah. So your first Alberta dates are coming up here. You're going to be wrestling.
Oh yeah, I've got some coming up. Yeah,
RCW. Are you looking forward to that?
Hell yeah, man! I've been to Alberta a few times, and I've only worked Can-Am to this point, so I'm really looking forward to hitting up RCW. I've been wanting to for quite some time.
Yeah, I think we're all pretty excited to have you. And RCW is awesome too, because it can be a little bit Wild West, you know what I mean? Like sometimes things get a little rough there, and I always appreciate that about RCW. Did you ever hear about the night that Jason the Terrible went on a rampage at the
I did not, but what's hilarious is that's sorry, you first.
Yeah, no, he went on a complete rampage at the oil arena, and the police ended up coming and everything. And now it's just a fond memory, but at the time it was like this big deal where we were like, oh, this might have gone a little too far. But yeah, I like Jason the Terrible. I think he's pretty fantastic.
He's scary as hell, but he's super legitimate. But yeah, he's an awesome dude for sure. That's funny enough, was when I was going to come to RCW for my debut match there in 2020, at the end of 2020, I was supposed to wrestle Jason the Terrible. And he kept on telling me that he was going to beat the fuck out of me. So I was like, you're a legit dude. I mean, I have to say, I'm not going to not wrestle him, right? So I have to take it. I'm just going to get in there and dish it out back, right?
Yeah. Like, I mean, I think that's kind of what happened at the Oil City thing was he him and Slammer were going at it, and Slammer ended up.
Was that when Slammer knocked him out?
Yeah, Slammer knocked him out. When he came to, he was on a rampage, and it was pretty glorious. You know.
That's when he took off the coveralls, right, and the mask and whatnot, and
Oh
revealed
yeah,
himself as
yeah,
Kurt Muffet.
he was bleeding all over the place, and then he was cutting promos backstage on people and stuff. It got really out of hand, but it's a fond memory for me because I wasn't involved in any of the the consequences of such, but and all I have from it is memories of this night that Jason the Terrible went on a rampage, and we were doing a battle royal in the main event, and I didn't wrestle in Edmonton all that often, but I was like, yeah, if he hits the ring during this, I'm out of here. Like, I'm not dealing with that. Yeah.
Legit. I've heard some stories about him being legit tough guy, and obviously he is. If you followed his career, he's crazy in the best of ways. So I can definitely see what you mean.
Yeah. Have you ever had a chance to wrestle with Vince Austin?
No, I haven't, but I really want to. Guy's so cool. He's legit as it comes. He's so awesome. He's such a nice dude, respectful, loves the business, loves business. I mean, that alone says something, right? Like, I've seen a video recently of him doing a twisting body attack off the top rope to the outside. So the guy's crazy as it gets, killing it.
Yeah. I was in one of those matches with him, and he did that onto everybody. It was very impressive, and it was one of those things where everybody did something. Like, we all dove to the floor. I think I did a moonsault to the floor, and then he went up and did that, and I was like, I just tried to do something like my most impressive thing, and then he did that, and it was like, okay, yeah. But
overshadowed.
He's one of my favorites for sure, and he loves the hardcore stuff too.
Yeah, he was telling me recently when I just talked to him when he was down here that he didn't actually spend most of his career doing hardcore. He just spent the last few years doing it. He was mostly a tag team guy, and then he just got a typecast they get as hardcore, I guess, as hardcore guy, and now he's hardcore dude.
Have you had any chance to go out to Winnipeg or any other territories out in Canada?
No, I really want to. I really want to start hitting up Ontario. That's the place I feel to be. Like, all the names come through there. There's a lot of big companies. Impact is there. So I mean, that's where my goal is at this moment, is to try and get myself signed there. So I will be branching out as time goes on.
I feel like that's probably one of the better places to be actually seen. One place that I feel like I really want to go to, and I don't know why, but I really want to go wrestle in Newfoundland. I think
that's awesome.
I think that would be so fun. I
think so too. Yeah. Is there anybody you want to wrestle while you're out there?
My original trainer, Andrew Hawk, he moved back out there, and I'd like to have a match against him. But also, they have this guy called Jeremiah Javen, and he's come and done my podcast a couple of times. My buddy Cameron Stevens lives out there. I'd love to wrestle with him too. So, lots of guys, and that's just another one of the things is I recently got to go out to BC. We were on the same show for Eddie there. And that's one of my favorite things now is that when I do go to new places, I just go and I make a bunch of new friends, it just seems like everybody's there to achieve the same thing. Right. And, as far as I'm
and those who aren't, they work themselves out eventually.
Yeah. I've always felt that my favorite part about wrestling is going and entertaining people with my friends, Yeah. And that's
just the whole experience, right? Like from getting there to shaking the hands and doing the whole thing to the camaraderie of setup and takedown, every single thing is part of the experience, right? And a lot of vets, as they get older, they don't necessarily want to do setup and takedown. And I get it because it's monotonous and it's heavy and it's boring and it can be boring, but there's a part of me that enjoys getting to that and just getting to enjoy the not so fun aspect of the business, I guess. And it is what you make it, right? It's obviously not as fun as being in the ring, but there's something special about just being with the ring crew or the roster, the locker room, whatever the case, and just, I don't know, getting in the shit and doing it.
Yeah, and I mean, if you are willing to go and get on the ring and help on that aspect of things, you just show your passion for it, right? So I think the promoters are much more apt to use guys that are down to do that than people that are walking around big leaguing people or thinking they're superstars and don't need to help, right? Like, yeah, those kind of people just generally, I guess nobody
They won't
maybe.
last.
Yeah, I just people just talk and they're like, oh,
Yeah.
he's not doing nothing, But what do you?
No one's going to show you have initiative more than you, right?
Yeah. Is there any like places besides Ontario that you'd really, really like to go to? I could see you doing really well in Winnipeg.
Thank you. I mean, ultimately, the goal is I want to get myself signed. So that's where my brain is at, just getting to one of the major companies. In terms of wrestling and where I want to go, I really just want to go where the money is, where the spots are. Obviously, this sounds marky, but where the belts are, because I love belts. Who doesn't, right? Like, I mean, everybody, like, I love every aspect of the business. So, I mean, like, I technically just want to go where I'll make the biggest name, where I'll get the biggest PO and the best spot.
That's completely fair and makes complete sense. Are you involved in the training of any the younger talent out in BC?
I don't have a school at this moment, but I've been thinking about starting one, and like I've been thinking about also doing online coaching for younger talent. I used to have. I'm kind of busy now, so I don't really have the same open door policy. But I used to tell every greenhorn or every person that was wanting to get better, like, you have me on social media. You can just message me whenever, right? Like, ask me any question, whatever the case. Any knowledge that I have, just take it, right? Feel free. Like, the point of life is to find your gift and then give it away, right? So I mean, that's. I make myself, or have made myself, available to, like, watch matches, critique stuff, and all that jazz, like doing the online aspect of it to this point. But I do really want to eventually get myself situated in terms of a school. But it's just about waiting for the right moment, I guess. Or you got to make your own moment too. So I mean, there is that, right? So eventually it'll happen, though.
Are you based in Vancouver or Victoria?
Yeah. I'm in Langley, but it's the same kind of idea. Yeah, Vancouver.
Okay, I hear you.
I just I'm in the Okanagan all the time. I'm in Victoria all the time. Just the main companies around here. That's where I'm usually at.
Solid. I heard that the Thrash Wrestling had a big bloody crazy tournament there. How did you fare in the tournament?
I won, obviously. Yeah, I was in a casket match, so I wasn't in the tournament. I was defending my belt.
Oh, okay.
And funny enough, on that night, my girlfriend was doing like helping out with stuff, whatever. And it's obviously a very hardcore tournament or night or evening, whatever. So somebody was smashing light tubes around the ring, and one got her in the eye.
Oh,
so that was quite the experience.
Have you been in those like light tube matches and stuff before?
Not really yet, but I mean, I'll do anything. Like the Jason the Terrible match that I was going to have. Like at that moment, that's when I decided I was like, I'll literally do everything. Like I'm very, like I said, like I'm story-based wrestler. Like I don't really take the big crazy bumps or whatever the case, but I always tell everyone that I'm loyal to the story. And if the story dictates that something like that should happen, then screw it, right? Like whatever happens, hope for the best. Funny enough, on that same thing, in terms of the story, the first time I ever did a top rope shooting star press was in the main event of one of the biggest shows for ECCW at the time, like in 2014, because I was like, the story dictates that I should do this. I'm like, the first time to try is when I'm on the top rope. I hope this goes well, and luckily it did.
That's crazy. Yeah. I would not even attempt to do a shooting star press because I would very likely hurt myself.
The funny thing is I have no aim with it. So I just got to jump and hope for the best.
Yeah, I feel like I could jump out forwards, but then I would smoke the back of my head on the turnbuckle or something, or I'd be like the guy online, and you see him and he goes for the shooting star press. He just ends up doing a backflip and landing with his belly onto the rope. And it's like, oh, I feel bad for the guy because it's like, oh, this guy's out there putting in this effort and trying to impress everybody. And then, just this one little thing goes wrong. That's
funny enough. The story about that it was a 6-man tag. It was myself, Jamie Diaz, and Daniel Adonis. We were DTA at the time, and we were wrestling Buddy Wayne, Brutus Beefcake, and Scotty Mack, 6-man. And so near the end of the match, our finisher was going to be called the S3, and it was shooting star press, but the three of us doing in sync, right? Like a sync shooting star press. And Jamie Diaz hadn't done one, I don't think, to that point in the ring. And when the time came, Daniel Adonis and I both did the shooting star presses, because obviously I'm just going to do one and hope for the best. But Jamie Diaz did a 450 instead, because he didn't feel confident, I guess, to do the shooting star at the time. And because he shot out further than he would have had he done the shooting star press, and I don't have any aim with my shooting star press, I landed with my elbow / forearm on the back of his head and knocked him out.
Oh.
Yeah. Crazy. But luckily, all he had to do
I'm baffled at the fact that Brutus the Barber Beefcake was in this match with all these shooting star presses and 450s going on. How did he feel about that?
Luckily, they were all moving.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Brutus the Barber
Beefcake,
he's an interesting guy, eh?
Yeah. He's dope. He's lived quite the life.
Yeah, he was on one of the CWE tours that came through here, and yeah, he was very, very interesting.
I heard of that story. Yeah,
he had a lot of good, he had some cool stories and stuff, but there was also some stories that were told about him that might have been classified as horror stories.
Yeah.
But have you been in the ring with any other big names like that? Brutus the Barber Beefcake's big star.
Totally. I've been in the ring with Carlito, Val Venus, Godfather, Psychosis. I know there's a couple more. I was managed by Jimmy Hart twice, which was awesome. There's been names that come through here, and I've been very fortunate that I've been able to get in the ring or be around them. So I mean, that's the thing. One of the funny things when I was green, like I told you, like I started off, my name was the Greed Father, and I always wanted, like, what are the chances if I ever get to wrestle the Godfather, the Greed Father, Godfather, you know? And then I got it to happen. I'm like, that's literally, I just manifested that like that. What are the chances that I would get to wrestle him? And yeah, it's just super cool. But yeah, I've been fortunate to wrestle a bunch of bigger names, which is really cool.
Solid. And like I would just imagine that when you have these matches coming up, you're just kind of looking forward to the knowledge you're going to be able to gain from working with these people, and even just like speaking to them. And like we did a thing in Saskatchewan, and I had to ride with IRS. He was in the car with us, and he just told us great wrestling stories the whole time. And it was like, well, this was worth the trip alone, you know?
Damn right. Yeah. Just like being in the ring with them too, right? Like you just learn little things just by interacting with them, touching them, you know, just like when you lock, like every little thing you can just learn by watching them operate, right? Like even if they're not saying anything to you, like before and after the match is when you gain the knowledge, obviously, when they're speaking to you, but just being in the ring with them is like so when I was at Storms, we were all really scared to hit each other at first, because obviously you don't want to hurt someone. Mm-hmm. And then we were having mock matches, and Storm came down on me with a senton, and I was like, oh, that's how we're supposed to actually do this. Like the snugness everyone talks about. And I was like, so it taught me the difference between somebody who, and like, again, like I said, like just being in the ring with someone of that caliber, you just learn by them doing what they do. And it's like, it's a different level when like, how they hit to how us greenhorns would have. I'm not greenhorn anymore, but when I was at the time, but yeah, it's like you just learn by being in the ring with them, right?
Mm-hmm. And was that like a major thing for you to have to improve on? Was your striking? Like if you had to like evaluate yourself, where would you say you've improved the most since you started?
Promo, character, and slowing down and like telling a story. Because like when I first started, like there's obviously a lot of trends in anything, and like the trend in wrestling nowadays is be extremely acrobatic and high flying and spots everywhere, right? So like when I first started, I was kind of advised by people because I didn't necessarily know what I wanted to bring to wrestling. So I would try to wrestle that style and fail horribly every time, just because that's not how I am, right? Like when I first started, before I started even, the thing I was obsessed with was chain wrestling. I was like, I wanted to be the best chain wrestler ever, like the guy who could just wrestle the whole match, like, and not like separate from the person, right? And then I got in the ring and I realized that was the thing I sucked most at. So I'm like, that's what I'm not going to do is chain wrestle. So funny enough, I've chain wrestled one time since 2014. So I just don't do that kind of stuff. But anyways, when I first started, my punch was abysmal. And the hilarious thing about that is Storm actually taught us how to punch, but it wasn't, maybe I was overthinking it, but my punch was just terrible. And I just threw the forearms like everybody does. And then in 2017, I was just in a random training class in Vancouver, and somebody's like, so we're going to hit a thing, whatever it was, I can't remember. And then as they charge at you, I want you to throw a punch. And they charged at me and I threw a punch and I wasn't overthinking it for the first time. And I was like, that was fucking beautiful. It's like, so then I just started working on my punch ever since then. And like, since then I've adapted said punch to be very Scott Hall / Undertaker-esque. So those are the people I like to take from in terms of like the punch, because they're just amazing punches. But in terms of what I've gotten most improved at, is my promos were terrible for quite some time until I started really just sitting down and turning on the camera and just talking and learning, telling a story, slowing down, watching the old wrestling like that, because you're not going to be different or stand out or learn how to tell a story if you're watching a lot of today's product. And like there is a lot of storytelling in today's product, there's just not like it used to be. So like, yeah, all of those areas are the things in which I've most improved. So I'm not a chain wrestler, I'm a brawler, so I basically just brawl and don't chain wrestle, which sucks because that's what I wanted to do originally. Yeah. Wrong blur.
I mean, I think that's, that's perfectly fair. I mean, yeah. I'm not a master chain wrestler either. Like I remember that show that we did for Eddie. Then it was my first show in front of my hometown. So I was like thinking, oh, I'm gonna go out there and do all my athletic moves and impress people. And then the first match went on, and it was like it was Travis Williams and I think Miles DeVille. They just did a bunch of incredible shit, and I was just like, well, maybe I'll just go and get the crowd going and stay in my lane. And I think that worked out much better for me. And,
yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And but it was definitely a lot of fun. So
what's funny about that is like in terms of all the crazy spots and high flying and technical wrestling, and like I don't do that stuff, but my biggest thing is working the crowd, and like they're there to be interacted with, right? Mm-hmm. And all I do is I'm usually a heel, so I just do what a heel should do, and I just be the most non-redeemable person you could be. And every single show, I get people coming up to me and being like, you were the best. I loved everything you did. I remembered what you did. And it's literally just because I'm waiting for them to chirp at me, and then I chirp back, and like I'm just interacting. Like I can't do the backflips. I mean, I can do the backflips, whatever, but I don't do them as good as somebody else can. But they remember people there to work them. They remember getting worked, like getting interacted with. So the things that I do leave a lasting impression longer than all the flips and the spots.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that sentiment, because like, you could go out there and do all the Hurricane Ranas and Canadian Destroyers you want, but at the end of the day, like the lady that I told to put her foot up so I could smash my opponent's head into her foot, like she's gonna probably remember that before she remembers the flip pile drivers and stuff. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Like, just because
another thing to think about too.
Interactions are happening,
Yeah, right. Legit. And like the thing about that though is like people can't relate to a backflip, a Hurricane Rana, Canadian Destroyer, because people don't do that in their daily lives. Like unless you're an acrobat, people relate to like being punched in the face or being screwed over or just like almost getting to that thing that you wanted and then not achieving it. Like people relate to real things like that, like talking to someone and having them mouth off back to you. That's very relatable. It's like, oh, we've all been mouthed off back to, we don't like it, obviously, right? So like, but yeah, not many people have been in the position to do a Canadian Destroyer. And ultimately, too, I don't think in any fight that I've ever been in, unless I was a young kid actually trying to apply German suplexes and pedigrees and stuff, there's no position that's going to allow someone to compromise themselves to get their head between your leg and then do a backflip, you know?
Yeah, it's not my repertoire, but don't get me wrong, it's not like I haven't been like, oh, it might be cool if I did a Canadian destroyer tonight, just for the hell of it. But like, yeah, it is one of those things where it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, you know.
But going back to it too, though, like I said, like we both said, like wrestling's a smorgasbord, right? So there is place and time for that. It's just not my place and time.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair for sure. Have you spent any time wrestling as a baby face, or are you primarily just been a heel?
I was a baby face for my rookie year because I just was doing whatever I was told, and then I got switched heel, and I've been a heel for 12 of my 13 years, basically. I had a little, like, 6 months as a face, and like I did better than I thought I would do, just because like when you're stuck something, well, not stuck, but when I was so into being a heel, I knew the ins and outs. And then like I was just nervous, but like, am I going to be a good face? Are people going to take me as a face? And then like what I learned from doing that was having experience of being a face made me a better heel, because now I know what I want for my baby faces, and now I can guide them in terms of where I want them to go, how I want them to do things. You know what I'm saying? Like you need to have both in order to get the full circle, but I'm far better as a heel, and I've spent most of my career doing just that.
Solid. Yeah, I think it's very interesting because I've done a little bit of both, and I can't really say what I prefer. You know, like I do like being a heel and getting people like agitated and whatnot, but I also quite enjoy it when people cheer for me.
Mm-hmm.
So
totally, I agree.
As long as people are making noise, that's
ultimately the key, right?
Yeah, that's kind of where I come from on these things.
Another thing to think about too around here. Sorry to cut you off again, but at this point now, with so many people coming into the business, there's a lot of greenhorns, right? And like for myself, I now end up wrestling people that I haven't wrestled before, and usually they're green, and they're not going to be able to call a match better than I can or elicit a heel response, because your heel makes your baby face, right? So if they're not a proper heel, then it's going to make me as a baby face look abysmal. So it just makes sense to have the more veteran guy as the heel in terms of majority of the greenhorns or younger talent.
Yeah, no, that definitely, that definitely makes sense. I don't get me wrong, I would class myself as a green guy. I mean, but I do like being in those situations where I've got a little bit more experience and I get to have like the control, you know, like I don't know. I find that it's a lot of fun sometimes when you just go to the ring with nothing planned and magic happens, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm always worried that it'll completely erupt in my face and make me look like a complete idiot, but that doesn't seem to ever happen. But
that's always the case, right? Always those nerves. I totally agree. But like the thing too is like when you're just starting out, there's again so many things to grasp that you're not necessarily listening to the crowd, right? Like I say this often, but when the voices in your head are louder than the ones in the seats, you're not going to be able to hear what they're telling you, right? So just as a heel with experience, being in the ring, like I'm only there listening to the crowd. Like I'm not really doing anything aside from that. And what's a really liberating feeling recently, is I've just started to, when I'm in the ring now, I literally have nothing in my head. Like say as I'm like, it was the first moment of realization. It was like a couple months ago. I was picking someone up while I was in the heat. And I was like, I literally don't have any idea what I'm going to do right now. I don't know. And as I was still standing them up, I'm like, I still don't know. This is extremely freeing. And I'm just like looking at the people while I'm picking them up, you know, just being and listening and waiting. And like, I don't think there's many more freeing feelings than just being in the ring with nothing in your head, you know, like 'cause you're ultimately just right there in the moment, and that's what the people want. They want you just to be there with them.
Yeah. And I mean, again, it's like one of those things that I noticed during matches is a lot of times it's not the big move that gets the reaction. It's oh, you did a big move and then you sat up and you looked around and just like eyeballed people. And then that's what got the reaction, right? Like it's some of that stuff is really interesting to me.
It's very true though. Like for myself, I don't have very many impressive moves. I have 5. Most matches I'll do 1, maybe 2, but like the things that are most impactful in terms of resonating with the crowd are like throwing a short arm clothesline. Because again, people can resonate with getting hit really hard and with something that they can understand, like a clothesline. But it's like the little things that I do, or the little things that any person does in the ring, seem to have a bigger reaction to the crowd. Like an eye poke is going to elicit a very strong reaction from the crowd, as opposed to like a shooting star press. I mean, like the shooting star press is the ooh and the ah, but everyone's like, you fucking prick, when you poke somebody in the eye, right? Like, yeah, it's just the little things get a bigger reaction, right? And like the little things can make a good match into a great match. So once you get that stuff, then you're like the in between things, right? Like people don't care about the moves; they care about what's happening between the moves.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's pretty accurate from the experience that I've had anyway. For sure. What are like a few of your favorite matches that you've had so far in your career?
Matches. One of my favorite matches was against my tag team partner and best friend, Daniel Adonis. We were kind of green at the same time, and it wasn't anything to write home about, but just getting to be in the ring with someone that you love so much, and like you can whoop each other's asses in that moment, right? Like it's just, I don't know, it's a very comforting, but you still know you're going to whoop each other's asses, right? So there's that. Any match I've had with Eddie Osborne, because he's such a fucking pro, he's just so good. Like any match we've had has been amazing. I had one match with Rhea Von Slasher in Langford where she beat me for the VIPW championship. And that was a wonderful time because, again, being good friends and whooping each other's asses, like it just, I guess for me, not a lot of matches as much as moments. That's what I really care about. I don't care about the match per se. Like I don't look at a whole body of work in a match and be like, that's great. Like I look at one little piece in the match where I connected with the crowd or whatever the case. So in terms of like the things that I've done that are my favorite things that I've done, I will hold Cremator Von Slasher. While I was in a match with BJ Laredo, I was giving him a crossface, and Cremator Von Slasher, I took him out months beforehand. So he stabbed up in the ring with a knife and started cutting the canvas from underneath, and then pulled me underneath the ring, and like that whole thing, and like covered me in blood, and then I had to escape it, and then like that whole thing, it was way more impactful in terms of the crowd seeing it than the 20 minutes I just wrestled before, right? Because people don't care about the whole thing. I mean, they can, but they care about the moments in the thing, right? Like if you look at The Rock and Hogan at WrestleMania 18, for me personally, I remember them staring at the crowd and like going back and forth and looking more than I remember most of the match. It's like it's those things, right, that people care about.
Yeah.
So that's what I care about.
I did a match with Marty Sugar, and he said he wanted it to be kind of like a Rock and Hogan thing, because I was like, okay, well, I'm coming in from out of town to wrestle you, and you're clearly the baby face here, but last time I was the baby face, and when I watched the match back, just because he told me that's kind of the vibe he was wanting, I noticed how little that they actually like did. And there was just a lot of like looking around and just creating a vibe and an energy, and people were feeding off of it, and it was getting like reverberated back into the arena and stuff. It's one of my all-time favorite matches, actually.
That's, you mean you and Marty?
I'm not me and Marty, no, Hulk and Rock.
I thought of your own matches. Like
me and Marty was it was fun, but it was also like it was one of my first out of town like BC dates, and so I was quite nervous for it. And like the night before we were traveling, and I didn't sleep at all, so I think I had like 20 minutes of sleep going into this match. And was very much just like, oh, very, very much like just exhausted. But we had fun, and people seemed entertained by it. I won the belt from Marty, and that was a good
That's
night
dope.
for
I
me.
love that belt.
Yeah, it was cool. You know,
Yeah. How did you feel taking bumps on 20 minutes sleep?
uh, I it didn't bother me that much. The first time I did Marty's show was like a month before that, and I noticed with his ring, like his ring is a weird ring with like the braces underneath are made of wood and stuff, so it's just more stiff ring in general. So like the first time I went out there, I was taking like overhead suplexes and Death Valley drivers and stuff, and then the second time when I went to fight Marty, it was, yeah, we were a little bit more conservative about the styles of bumps we were going to be taking in there, because yeah, I mean, it wasn't bad like that night of the first show, but the day afterwards you were like, oh yeah, the ring is noticeably stiffer this morning.
Yeah.
You know?
I asked that because I just recently, that match I was telling you about, the one, the casket match. I work nights because obviously wrestling isn't my thing. Like, it's not my full-time job at this moment. That's what I'm going to. But I got off work at 5, went to bed at 6, went to the ferry at about 7, and picked up the people that I was supposed to pick up. And then it was snowing up the highway that we were going to drive, and it's already a 4-hour drive. So, and I like to do, I don't know, I can be controlling, I guess, in certain circumstances. Like I want to drive because I want to be able to stop when I want and be able to do what I want when I want to do it. So I decided to take the entire drive. So I'm on an hour's sleep. I go pick up the people at the ferry, drive all the way to the Okanagan, wrestle the whole match, no sleep, and it hurt like a bitch on no sleep, and then drove back 7-ish hours because of the black ice and the snow, and then caught the ferry 2 hours later to go wrestle again. It's like, that sucked, just because when you don't sleep, everything just hurts more, it feels like.
Yeah. No, I after that match was over, we went back and I got a really good night's rest. And I actually I really liked wrestling out there in the Okanagan. I thought that was a lot of fun. I've enjoyed wrestling all over the place, everywhere I've gotten the opportunity to, like, I think that's one of the main things for me is just like, I always say gratitude's the attitude, like, it's just like such a fortunate thing that I never thought I'd be able to actually do. And then now I get to do it, and like I get to go places and
living the dream, right?
Yeah. Like, I don't make millions of dollars or anything like that, but people will pay me to come in and do my thing and entertain people they know. So that makes me very happy.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like, there's no different, there's no feeling other than being in the ring and being able to control the people. And like, here's another thing that I say all the time is like, I've done every single drug there is, and there's no drug like being in the ring when you have the people. It's something else, right? Like, it's indescribable.
Yeah. No, there's definitely been a couple of those moments for me where it was like, you watch it back the video and you're like, oh wow, listen to the people, like, listen to this is crazy. Like, sometimes the audio is even a bigger click in for your memory than the actual video, right?
True.
Because I'm not trying to sound lazy or whatever, but like the Canadian Destroyer looks really cool, but it's the reaction afterwards that's the satisfying part, right? So if you're getting those reactions from, like, even without all the crazy moves in the video, like, that's, I don't know, I think that's cool.
Well, that's the thing, right? Like, the little things, most of the time, if you're executing them in the proper way, get the bigger reactions, right? Like, if you do a bunch of things that are actually heelish, then people are going to understand what kind of character you are or gimmick you're portraying or whatever the case. And then you're not taking away from your babyface's pops, right? So like, if you're both doing moves to try and be a face and a heel, then you're just looking for the same reaction, and then crowd is just going to get quiet because they don't really understand what's happening. But if there's a clear established heel and babyface, then people are going to resonate and respect what both people are bringing and understand very clearly and know how to cheer and when to cheer and what to cheer, you know?
Yeah, I think it takes a lot of skill for the heels to do more impressive, like athletic moves in matches, because like you could do that stuff to impress people and stuff, and they'll applaud you and whatnot. But like if you're a heel and you don't want that applause, but you still want to do that cool stuff, you got to get like really creative with it. And I think
Yeah, there's
that's
ways to do it, but for sure,
yeah,
yeah.
something I'm still trying to work on.
It's a learning curve, dog. I'm still there too. I learn every single time I'm in the ring and outside of the ring, right? Like it never stops if you're actually trying to get better and learn.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm nowhere to where I want to be, but I've made a decent mark in terms of where I've been, which is knowing nothing and wrestling like a mark.
Have you had any opportunities to join up with be on any of the like dark AEW dark matches or anything like that, or like
I wish. That's again something when it was 2019, it was I think it was January, which was really cool because it was right before they stopped doing the tours because the world closed down, whatever. But I got some talent or some extra work for WWE, and I got to be on SmackDown, and I was security with a couple other guys in the Sami Zayn segment, and then Braun Strowman would come out, and then we were supposed to run at him, and then he would shoulder us, and I ran at that motherfucker with all I had. And if you watch the clip, like as I hit him, my legs go up like a scissor, and I just like boom, smuck the ground, and like. It felt like death and it looked like death, but I would do it all over again because it was so cool. But that's that, and like just getting to be extra around WWE during that time was what I've had thus far, and like that was a dream come true because that's all that's all I wanted to do was just be a WWE superstar or like be in WWE, whatever the case. Like that's the thing most people aspire to do. So just getting a little taste of it was amazing. But that's what I've done to this point, and I also got to be in a WWE movie, The Main Event. I think it was like 2019, whatever. So getting to do that as well, just getting to rub elbows with bigger names and like just to be in that environment of professionalism gives you a taste of what it's like, right? And yeah, it's crazy. It's awesome.
What are some of like the biggest differences from being backstage at say like a 365 wrestling show and being backstage at like WWE? Is it different for guys like local guys or versus like the WWE guys? Are you changing with like the superstars, or do you have your own like space? And how does that compare?
There was an extra. They have like a designated extra room where you do all your changing, whatever the case, and you just hang out in catering or just wherever you're needed. But just the level of difference is just like professionalism, right? Like nobody can touch the professionalism, the quality, the everything that WWE is, right? So I mean, just being around that, like when you're in any indie, for the most part, you're just hanging out with the locker room and enjoying it. And then when you're there in WWE, it's just it's kind of your back's against the wall because you're nervous and you don't want to fuck up, and you're just there to take whatever opportunities afforded to you, right? But yeah, it's professionalism. That's the one difference, and that's not a mark on or a knock on any indie company, right? Like everyone has a certain level of professionalism, but nobody has that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I can see it requiring like a bunch of professionalism. Is there like any like weird extra rules or anything that you remember having to abide by?
Just don't go up and like try and talk to people, right? Like, because obviously everybody probably tries to do that. Fanboys, just whatever. Funny story on that topic, though. It's hilarious. Of course, this is what happened. So I got to SmackDown, and I think it was SmackDown. It might have been SmackDown or NXT. Anyways, doesn't matter. But so I got there, and I don't wear suits because I'm like I like to wear cutoff shirts and jeans and just like normal clothes, whatever. So I had to wear a suit, obviously. And so we were going to help on a little backstage segment with Finn Balor, and I bent over immediately, like this is like 9 in the morning, and we're there all day, and we have to cut the segment shortly after that. So I bent over to pick up my coffee on the floor, and I literally ripped my pants from the belt buckle seam to my ass, like the bottom where the bottom seam is. So like my entire ass is out, and like so I just had to pull my pants up as high as I could, put my jacket over top of it, and just hope nobody saw, and like just in a very controlled motion, just like make sure it was always tucked up, and like, but like I had to be the entire day with this big of a hole in my pants with my ass showing. It's like, oh yeah, that was quite the experience. What a funny story to have then, right? But yeah, so if anybody ever sees that segment of me standing in the back with Finn Balor walking through, know I have a huge rip in my pants.
That's got to be like a good memory for you, you know?
Yeah, like, yeah, it was funny. I remember at one point I was watching the matches in catering, and I think it was Rhea Ripley that was sitting behind me, and I had to be, oh gosh, how am I supposed to get up? Because like as soon as I get up, I have to like suction my pants to my ass just to make sure I get up and nobody's seeing it. It was like, yeah, it was another stress added to an already stressful situation, but hilarious.
But I mean, I'm assuming you made it through without incident, and then like, obviously, if somebody did call you out on it, what are you going to do? Just be like, well, there's them the breaks, right? Like,
yeah, I have no pants, right? Yeah, what do you do? And like, yeah, luckily nobody has brought it up to me aside or until this point where I'm telling people, obviously. But yeah, I think I got out unscathed.
Solid. Well, Jordie, I think we're approaching the end of the interview here. So why don't you let everybody know where they can get a hold of you and whatnot, so that if they
my Instagram is the best pro wrestler, and no spaces, and my Facebook is Jordie Taylor. That's usually where I am. Is both of those. I don't really do Twitter or whatever, but yeah, the best pro wrestler on Instagram, Jordie Taylor on Facebook.
Solid, buddy. Solid. All right. Well, I want to thank you very much for coming on the show and just chatting with me about wrestling for a while. I really appreciate it. And I hope to I get to see you again soon here. I don't know if I'm going to be at those RCW shows that you're on coming up here or not, but hopefully I'll get to see you.
Hopefully we'll get to work a match relatively soon when you come back.
Yeah, I'm going for my surgery tomorrow morning at 8:00. So I'm a little nervous about it, but you know, life goes on. So
yeah, you'll do great. You'll do great. Yeah, just one step at a time, right?
Yep, I'm looking forward to all that. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you, brother. Have a nice day.